companies. We are a faith-friendly, purpose-driven company, maybe the largest faith-friendly, faith-based, purpose-driven company, maybe in the country, maybe the world. We don't know of any other publicly traded company because Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A are private family companies. We don't know of any other publicly traded company that would call themselves a faith-based company,
Yeah.
actually. So we have a purpose. Can everybody hear me well?
Yep.
Good. We have a purpose statement itself is pretty unique. Our purpose statement is to honor God in all we do by serving others, pursuing excellence, and growing profitably. Think about a company on the NASDAQ where their official purpose statement to honor God in all you do by serving others. And that's on the wall. The entire wall when you come into our headquarters, and it's on the wall of our 104 plant sites throughout the country.
I might drink a drink. I'm going to drink a Coke today because of that, man.
Yeah, we have over 17,000 employees and 104 plant sites. And that to honor God and all we do by serving others is on the wall of each one. But I want to share how we live that out. It's not so important to just have it on your wall. What's important on the back of our business cards, what's important is how we live it out. Well, here's how we live it out. In 104 plant sites, which is about 200 employees, so 17,000 employees and about 200 per plant, we have a chaplain for 23 years now at each plant site. A chaplain for every 200 employees. You can imagine the several $1 million that costs to do that in 104 plant sites. And I tell you, these chaplains, they have transformed our culture, and the retention rates we're seeing in our company versus the beverage industry and the employee engagement has been amazing. And also exciting is we're averaging so far for this calendar year, and I think you'll be excited to hear this. It's almost like a church plant, 317 salvations and recommits per month of our employees, 317. Our chaplains track that at every plant site, 104 of them. And for the entire year last year, we averaged 286 recommits and salvations per month of our employees. So between the 2 years, 24 and 25, it's almost 300, averaging about 300 recommits and salvations per month. We hire about 1,000 employees a year to replace retirees. And we pray on Monday mornings that they're all non-believers, the 1,000 employees a year, because they're going to get introduced to God when they join us.
Yeah. Huh.
So at the chaplain in every plant, we have 134 prayer groups company-wide in all these facilities. I'm blessed to lead 16 of them. Myself, the chaplains, is also part of our department. We're responsible for what's called the Culture and Care Department and Vice President of the Culture and Care Department, which is really the faith integration. But it's called the Culture and Care Department, which includes all the faith integration, the chaplaincy, the prayer groups. We have Bible studies. Now, think about it. You get a recommit to salvation. Well, what do you do with that employee? 317 a month. We connect them to a local church. We get them in what's called a radical mentoring discipleship program we have. We use radicalmentoring.com, which was developed by Reggie Campbell in Atlanta. We've used that program 11 years, and it's 8 new believers, 8 young believers with 2 mature believers mentoring them. And I've got a couple of those groups too. I got a group just going on in South Bend, Indiana. Right now, you meet monthly for 3 hours a month, and you mentor them to help them grow in their faith, build their quiet time, how to read the Bible, 2 scripture memorization a month. And then 2 of these months, besides the 3 hours a month, 2 of the months are noon Friday to noon Sunday, 2 of the months in the 1-year program, where they actually share. To the group of 8, they share openly their testimony. These are all in-person meetings. They share their testimony. That way you're preparing them to share when they go out in the public, when they go out in their communities and they go out in the plant sites, they can share openly their own testimony. So we're preparing them to do that. We're preparing them to be evangelists and disciple makers. So that's a year-long program. We've seen lives change. We've been doing it for 11 years. Now listen to this. Our CEO and chairman, Frank Harrison, has had his own group of a different 8 every year for 11 years.
Woo!
So he himself, and he also leads he's also part of several of the prayer groups. So our chairman and CEO is engaged. This department, Culture and Care, reports to the chairman's department. It's that important. He feels like you have the right culture, it changes everything.
Amen.
Oh, for sure.
So this is not something that's a part of HR, a different department. This is the department that reports right to the chairman's department. So we've got the chaplains in every plant, 104 plant sites. We've got uh, prayer groups, Bible studies. We got the 1-year discipleship program. We have a servant leaders award every quarter to recognize employees that are living this out, this purpose statement to honor God in all we do by serving others, pursuing excellence and growing profitably. So we're very servant leader oriented, and we recognize that every quarter the employees vote on the servant leader of the quarter. At the end of that, after 4 quarters, we have the servant leader of the year. So the winners of the quarter, one of those will win the servant leader. It's just a way to recognize and to emphasize that servant leadership is important to us. We have a weekly devotional called Refuel, and it's audio, so even our truck drivers can hear it. It's every Monday morning.
There you go,
In
Jay.
this Refuel, this weekly devotional, we prepare the devotionals, the Culture and Care department, but the voice on the audio is a different employee from a different department every Monday. Sometime it'll be a forklift driver, and the next it may be vice president of sales. So it's different levels and different people from our 104 plant sites where people hear their colleagues, their teammates share the gospel, either share their testimony, usually sharing a biblical message for 3 or 4 minutes long, and a message that to encourage our teammates around the country, our 17,000 teammates. So that's been remarkable too, to encourage our teammates. And it's neat when someone's in a plant and they hear their colleagues share a devotional on the weekly refuel. And then they go up to him and say, "Hey, I didn't know you were a believer." And it starts a conversation. It's just another seed planted that leads to these 317 recommits and salvations a month that we're seeing. So it's chaplaincy, prayer groups, Bible studies, discipleship program, the Servant Leaders Award, the weekly devotional. We also have what's called the Gathering. It's our chapel service, but we don't want to call it chapel service and scare everyone away, for especially when we're hiring 1,000 non-believers a year to replace retirees. It's called the Gathering, faith, fellowship, and food. They're going to come for a free lunch, but they're going to hear a biblical message, either a testimony or a biblical message. And I tell you, that's been life-changing. We have that at our headquarters, which is where I'm at right now. Our headquarters are here in Charlotte for Coca-Cola Consolidated, but we live stream it to the plant site, to the plant sites, where everyone has access to this monthly devotional. So these are many layers that we add. Even our department also has a rapid response team. So, and they're employees, not contracted. So when we had like a hurricane and Hurricane Helene in Asheville, North Carolina, 22 of our employees' homes were pretty damaged. They were there within 24 hours, rebuilding roofs, repairing kitchens, rebuilding homes, and had everybody back in their home in 5 or 6 weeks. 22 homes paid for by the company.
Woo!
I tell you, it's life changing. And not only did those 22 employees hear about it, the 17,000 employees hear that happening. And this rapid response team is somewhere almost every week. A fire, tornado, a flood, hurricane, whatever it may be, repairing our teammates' homes and just loving on our teammates and caring for our employees. When COVID hit, here's another example. Our department also has a benevolence fund. COVID hit March 2020. We're the bottling company. People home more, they drank more. It was a record year in 122-year history of the company, COVID year 2020. But their spouses, a lot of them worked in a cinema or a universe, something that went remote, or a restaurant, and they lost their job, their spouses. And our chaplains were telling us, "Oh boy, employees are in trouble. They can't pay their mortgage, can't pay their rent, can't pay their car payments, can't pay their kids' college." We put a benevolence fund and took care of almost 700 teammates that needed financial help because their spouse lost their job for almost a year. Took care of their families to meet their financial needs. We don't know of any other company that did that. It's not because our employees are working overtime. It's because their spouses had last lost their job. And that's the type of things we're doing in the culture and care department. It's life changing. Uh, for the past 2 years, averaging almost 300 recommits and salvations a month. And it's the most exciting season I've ever seen. It's like a church plant within a publicly traded company that's on the NASDAQ.
I
And then
bet.
people say, well, if you're doing it that way, I bet your financial performance of your company's not doing well. No, I'm telling you, I've seen this. I've seen the stock outdo Google, Facebook, Intel. It's just the opposite. Uh, when you do it God's way, as our CEO and chairman Frank Harrison says, generosity drives cash flow. You can't outgive God. Our companies perform at a level that we just did a 10-for-1 stock split on our stock 2 months ago. 10-for-1. I mean, it's been Coca-Cola Consolidated. God has blessed the company. The more we do for our teammates, the more gospel we share, the more God blesses our business. So no, you can do it God's way and actually perform even better than, I mean, if you look at the S&P 500, it's maybe 20-fold in the last 30 years. We're almost 50-fold, 2 times the level of an S&P 500. God has blessed this
Mm.
business tremendously. 5 back-to-back record years in this company. Now I want to share how I got here. Very unusual. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend this path that I'm going to share. But 35 years ago, when I was 32 years old, I was at a company, a very large company. We're about a $7 billion company here at Coca-Cola Consolidated, 17,000 employees, 104 plant sites, headquarters in Charlotte, and about 7 billion in revenue. But 35 years ago, I was at a company 70 billion in revenue, the 56th largest company on the Fortune 500, known as ADM, Archer Daniels Midland. And I was divisional president and I was corporate vice president of the company at 32. We had a 75-year-old CEO, a 71-year-old COO, and I was 32 and I was ranked number 4 out of 32,000 employees. And I was being groomed to replace the COO. And another colleague of mine was 10 years older than me. He was 44 and he was being groomed to be the CEO. And I had my own, when I started as divisional president, I had that position for almost 8 years, had my own Falcon 50, was given to me. The 7 top executives each had their own corporate jet. I was number 4, so I had my own jet. The CEO wanted to sell his house, him being 75, wanted to move something smaller. He gave me a startup bonus that the week that he made me the divisional president and the corporate vice president of the company. And he gave me a startup bonus to buy his house. It was 13,000 square feet, 8-car garage. I wasn't a Christian during this time, by the way. I went to Cornell University and got my PhD in biochemistry. All I heard at the university, if you believe in God, you can't be a scientist. Never met one Christian professor in 8 years, college, not one. But I had plenty to say that said, if you believe in God, you can't be a scientist. Matter of fact, I got to the point when I was a PhD student at Cornell in New York, and most of the Ivy Leaguer like this are kind of anti-God, even though they may have been Christian schools 100 years ago, they're not today. And and I told all my friends at Cornell that my parents are Christians because I grew up in a Christian home, and I said because they didn't go to college, they don't know better.
Oh,
That's where I was when I was getting my PhD. So I graduated not as a Christian from Cornell. Uh, um, I graduated in 1983. The biotech industry was booming. It's just when Genentech had started. I can remember starting right out of college at Cornell at 120,000 a year when the average salary of a college graduate was about 20,000. It was 120 in 1983 from an Ivy League school, company car. They moved us to St. Louis. I worked for Ralston Purina, which is now Nestle's. And boy, it was on. I mean, look out, Bon Jovi, here I come. By the time I was 27, I graduated 25. Time I was 27, I was living in Germany for 4 years. I was vice president responsible for acquisitions and joint ventures, and vice president at age 27. By the time I was 32, I was divisional president of ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, and corporate vice president of the 56th largest company in the Fortune 500. Had my own jet. Bonuses, the ethanol was in our division, and stock options and bonuses, it was about $300,000 a month for 8 years, 1989. So 3 million a year, that would be about 10 million today. And I'm telling you, I got addicted to that. The jet, the mansion, the 8-car garage. I filled that 8-car garage with a Ferrari, 2 BMWs, 2 Mercedes. Look, I was Justin Bieber before Justin Bieber. I mean, it was on. It was on. And my wife, she worked for Carl Sagan at Cornell when I was getting my PhD in biochemistry. And my wife, Ginger, by the way, I met her in 7th grade and she was in 8th grade, went to our high school proms together. And she worked for Carl Sagan, who was an eighth. Remember the show Cosmos on
Oh
TV?
yeah.
That's who she
Yeah.
worked for when I was at Cornell. And Carl Sagan was very anti-God, very much an atheist, and publicly about being an atheist. So my wife didn't believe in God either. Especially Cornell turned both of us from believing God. But her mom got real sick when Ginger was 30 and was in hospital 10 months. And a nurse led Ginger sat by her mom's side 4 or 5 hours a day for 10 months. And a nurse led both Ginger and her mom to God, to Jesus. And Ginger came home and told me she was a Christian. I said, Ginger, I'm a PhD scientist from an Ivy League university. I said, you work for Carl Sagan, one of the top astrophysicists in the world. And here your husband's a PhD biochemist from an Ivy League university, full scholarship for 8 years, your husband. And I'm saying, you know, God doesn't exist. And she said, Mark, I'm telling you, you're wrong. You can take that PhD and shove it. God exists. Jesus is the Son of God, and you're wrong. And I'm going to pray for you, Mark. And she prayed for me every day for almost 10 years before I finally got it. And I'm going to share that journey. So where she's a Christian, she's involved with church, women's Bible studies, all the stuff. I'm buying Ferraris, Mercedes, BMWs, horses. Our house had a 8-car garage and it had horse riding stables. We bought the CEO's home. He lived in it for 35 years. It had horse riding stables where your kids ride an inside arena that's heated. And so I said, Ginger, I just bought a red Ferrari last month. This would have been about 1989. And I said, let me buy you a yellow one with next month. I'm 300,000 a month in bonuses from ethanol. So let me buy you a yellow one next month. She said, that'd be my worst nightmare. I said, Ginger, you're driving a 10-year-old Jeep Cherokee. That's crazy. I can buy you a Ferrari. Yeah. She said, no, I want to be a good steward for God. And I've got another 5 years at least on my car, and it was 10 years old. So I've got 8 cars, $2 million worth of cars in the driveway, and she's driving a 10-year-old Jeep. And then she came back to me about 2 weeks later. She said, Mark, she said, you know, you're spending all this on Ferraris. The school needs about 10 buses to transport the youth. The church needs to transport the youth. And she said, I want to buy them buses and vans, and it'll cost less than one Ferrari. And she said it was her income too, and this is what she wanted to do. So we bought these vans for her church that she went to, and she forced me to go to that church, and it was one ear out the other, just like it was when my parents forced me to go. She bought and I told all my friends, why would she want to do that instead of have a yellow Ferrari? That's the craziest thing I ever heard. And all my friends at ADM also thought that was crazy. And a couple months later, one of the children in our kids' school, we had 3 children, and one of their kids had a car wreck with their parents and became a quadriplegic. And Ginger said, Mark, less than a Ferrari. She said, I want to pay off their mortgage and I want to give them some money where their mom don't have to work and can take care of their child who became a paraplegic. And so she paid off the mortgage, a couple $100,000. And Illinois is where, Central Illinois is where ADM's world headquarters are. And I was telling all my friends, my wife's driving a 10-year-old Jeep. She's buying vans for the church. She's paying off people's mortgage. It's the craziest thing I ever heard. And I offered her a yellow Ferrari, and I just don't understand it. And so that we were on 2 different paths at that time. So I'm a couple years at the company in that role, divisional president, biotech division, corporate vice president of the company. The CEO was grooming me to be the COO and someone 10 years older than me to be the CEO. And he came to me, said, Mark, we're mentoring now. He's 77 now, and I'm 34. And he said, we've got, being a publicly traded company, we have to start sharing about succession planning. We're going to announce in Fortune magazine that in a couple of years, you're going to be the next COO. and then another individual will be the next CEO. But Mark, you got to start learning some of the things we're doing in the company. Start sharing with me a price fixing scheme where they're meeting with their competitors and it's illegal, breaking antitrust laws and fixing prices of ingredients for almost 12 years. And I said, well, that's not legal. And he said, Mark, everybody does it. We've been doing it 12 years. It's the way business is done. Our competitors are our friend and our customers are our enemy. And it's that simple. And he said, this is what you got to do. You're going to go from 3 million a year to 10 million a year when you become COO. And I thought, boy, I'd step on my own grandma for that. And so that's where I started getting involved, being mentored on a price fixing scheme. I'm about 7 months into it. And I was telling Ginger that I'm about a couple years away from becoming the next COO of the company, already divisional president. So I was going to go from the number 4 executive to the number 2 out of 32,000 employees in a $70 billion a year company. ADM's probably 38, I think, on the Fortune 500 today, number 38. They were number 56 at that time, Archer Daniels Midland. So I shared that with Ginger about 7 months later. And she said, Mark, is that legal? All that? And I said, well, it's not legal, but everybody does it. They've been doing it for 12 years. She said, Mark, that's a fraud. She said, I've got a big problem with this. She said, I can't believe you got involved with fraud. I said, Ginger, for me to become COO, this is what I've got to do. And it's going to be go from 3 million to 10 million a year. And she said, Mark, how much do we need? We live in a 13,000 square foot mansion. We got an 8-car garage. We got horse riding stables with an inside arena. You're flying around on a corporate jet. How much is enough? And I said, Ginger, well, look, I'm 34 years old. We got a long time to live, and I want to just continue to move up the corporate ladder. And I think at some point, even the guy 10 years older than me that gets announced as CEO, I'll go from COO to CEO in another 8 or 10 years. And she said, Mark, you're addicted to this. This is addiction. And she said, how much does the company earn on this price fix? And I said, well, we're 70 billion in revenue, 4 billion in net profit before tax. And I said about $1 billion from the price fixing, about $1 billion a year. She said, who pays that $1 billion a year? I said, the consumer. So when we charge Kellogg's and food companies for these ingredients higher prices, they pass it on to the consumers. So consumers paying $5 extra on $50 worth of groceries. This would have been 1992 when we were having this conversation. She was 33, I was 34. She was a Christian already for several years. And she said, Mark, I'm really troubled with this. I'm going to have to pray about it. My grandma's on Social Security. She's getting ripped off every time she goes to the grocery store. And I'm really troubled by this. And she happened to be on the book of Esther in her women's Bible study that week. And she prayed about it for a couple hours. She came back into the family room. She said, Mark, God led me to a decision. She said, you've got to turn yourself into the federal authorities. You got to do it today or I'm going to do it for you. I said, Ginger, I could go to federal prison for price fixing. It's a federal offense. And I said, our CEO is a billionaire. He owns 5% of a $70 billion company, the largest single shareholder in the company. And I said, he lived in this house we live in for 35 years. And I said, this man is best friends with President Clinton, flew to President Nixon's funeral on President Clinton's plane, and he will destroy us. I mean, he's connected to the U.S. president. She said, no, I prayed about that, Mark. God's going to protect us. We're going to do it. We're going to do it today. And if you don't do it, I'm doing it for you.
Yeah.
Today.
And within a couple hours, we're sitting with 2 FBI agents. I don't know how many of you ever went to the FBI and told them you're stealing $1 billion a year, but it's an interesting reaction. I mean, it was reaching Janet Reno, William Sessions, the director of the FBI at the time. It became the largest price fixing case in U.S. history, $1 billion theft from ADM. 11 companies each got $1 billion extra from the price fix. $11 billion theft a year for 12 years
Wow.
in the collusion international cartel. And I'm 7 months in it. We're sitting with the FBI. And the FBI said, now, what are we here for? And I said, you got all these drug dealers in Decatur, Illinois. I said, I don't feel safe here. You got so much work you be doing. You don't need to be talking to us. And Ginger said, a fraud. He said, what kind of fraud? And I said, you got all these drug dealers in Decatur. You got so many things you could be doing besides talking to us. And Ginger said, a massive fraud. He said, how big? And I said, about all these drug dealers. I mean, I'm divisional president of one of the biggest companies in the world. There's so many things you could be doing. And Ginger said, $1 billion fraud. And he said, $1 million fraud. And she said, no, $1 billion. He said, how long's this been going on? I said, what about all these drug dealers in Decatur, Illinois? I don't feel safe. And Ginger said, it's been going on for 12 years. So he got all the truth out of Ginger quickly. And and I had a choice to either be arrested or wear a wire. And I sure didn't want to get arrested at age 34. And I wore a wire where they wanted to go after the kingpins that had been involved for 12 years, and I'm only involved 7 months. And I wore a wire. They shaved my chest, put 2 microphones on my chest, had a tape recorder attached to my back with an athletic band, had a second tape recorder in a briefcase and a third tape recorder in a notebook. And I wore a wire for the FBI. They wired me up at 6 o'clock every morning for 3 years, 1992 to 1995. And I tell you, I was spent. There's a documentary on my website, markwhitacre.com. If you go to www.markwhitacre.com, it says ID right under the picture of Ginger and I. That's Investigation Discovery, Discovery Channel. And that's got a 2-minute trailer and the full 1-hour show with the 3 real FBI agents that were involved with the case. And they also have Ginger and I part of that interview where you can really see what happened and how that case started. And wore that wire 3 years. They gave me full immunity, never to be charged. They said, Mark, if these guys catch you wearing a wire, they're going to kill you. So they gave me full immunity and said, all you got to do is stay out of your own way. Tell us anything that's illegal that's going on, and you got full immunity. So the last few months, about 3 years into it, they said, Mark, we're going to do a raid on the company. We're going to send 70 agents and get computers. We're going to get paperwork and financial documents to support these increases that have happened, to verify everything that's been said on 3 years of tapes. I wore a wire 10 hours a day for 3 years. So we're going to get the paperwork to support the tapes and prepare for trial. So the companies are going to learn real quick that you're the informant, and you know they're going to fire you immediately. Your time there is going to be over with. By that time, I'm about 38 by the time I wore a wire for 3 years. And then I think, gosh, 2 or 3 months, they're going to do a raid. I'm going to get fired 2 or 3 months from now. And 90% of my income is in stock options, and we were doubling our stock about every 3. When you price fix, you drive your profits up. We were doubling our stock about every 3 years, and so our stock options were going through the roof. But I had a 5-year set of stock options that I could exercise in 5 years, signed by the general counsel and the CEO, because that's a big part of our income with stock options. About 90% of our income is bonus and stock option, about 10% base salary. And it was worth, if I looked at stock option, the stock price today is worth $9 million. And it's 10 months from the exercise date. And the FBI said they're going to do a raid in 2 to 3 months. I thought, I'm walking away from $9 million. And I'm addicted. It's like crack. I'm addicted to that by that point. So I looked at it, I said, how am I going to walk away from $9 million? I'm going to get fired. Who's going to hire someone to wear a wire against their own company for 3 years? I mean, I said, my career, it's going to take me 3, 4, 5 years to get back on my feet. How am I going to keep up this 8-car garage mansion and these horses and this lifestyle I had? And I decided they're stealing $1 billion a year for 12 years. I'm going to exercise those stock options myself. So I wrote 5 checks over about 2 months to myself for $9 million. I thought if it ever came up, I could prove in court that I had a set of stock options signed by the corporate officer, CEO, and general counsel, that they owe me $9 million, that I had to get it 10 months early because I was going to get fired. So I did that, thought I was the smartest guy. Thank God I went to Cornell, thought I was the smartest guy in the room. The day that ADM learned that I was informant, when the raid happened, they called the FBI and said, he's no white knight informant. He stole $9 million from us at the same time he's working for you. So the FBI come to my house and said, Mark, we said, we're giving you full immunity no matter what crimes you've done, as long as you tell us, as long as it's not coming from the company, because that discredits you as a witness when it comes from the company. We offered you full immunity no matter what you've done, but all you had to do is tell us first. what about this 9 million? And I said, look, you guys, they owe me $9 million. And I showed them the stock option document. I had several copies printed off, being prepared in case it came up. They said, Mark, this has an exercise date 10 months from now. You can't just exercise these on your own. There's SEC rules and regulations and guidelines. He said, you broke the law how you did this. I realized 10 months they owe you that from now, and you wouldn't get if you're fired, but you just can't exercise them early. I said, well, I wasn't going to walk away from it. They owe me that. He said, Mark, you broke the law. You're going to lose your immunity agreement, but we understand the pressure you've been under. We should have never taken you wearing a wire for 3 years. It's too long. You weren't thinking clearly. We're going to get you the best deal we can get you. They went to the prosecutors in Chicago and said, look, this guy wore a wire for 3 years on $1 billion theft, 11 companies a row, 11 companies in total, 11 billion a year for 12-year theft. Said he made a $9 million mistake, something they really owed him 10 months from now. And we want to get the best plea deal we can get for him. They gave me a Martha Stewart sentence, 6 months. 6 months in prison, no fence, a white collar camp, 6 months. You go in at 38, you come out at 38. My lawyer calls me in Chicago and said, Mark, the FBI got you a deal of a lifetime. Give them the 9 million back. They give it to the company and you're going to do 6 months. I said, I don't know if I can do 6 months. I just wore a wire for 3 years for 10 hours a day. They said, Mark, you got to do it. And Ginger looked at me. She said, Mark, I beg you, let's sign it. Let's put it behind us. I looked at Ginger and said, Ginger, it's all your fault. I've worn a wire for 3 years because of you. And now I got to go to a federal prison camp for 6 months because of you. I ripped it up, fired the lawyer, hired Donald Trump's lawyer the next day, end up with 11 lawyers, fought the case for 3 years in the courts. Now I'm 40 years old, just a couple months from 41. And I got 8.5 years instead, when I would have had a 6-month plea agreement. I was so depressed, pulled my car in one of those garages, wrote a 17-page letter to Ginger and my kids, and tried to take my own life. I was hopeless and helpless by that point. Tried to take my own life, hospitalized for a month, heavily medicated, treated for post-traumatic stress disorder and clinical depression, some of the things that happen when you wear a wire for 3 years. And then you got to go to prison after you wear a wire for 3 years. And I thought, how am I going to do 8.5 years? Hospitalized for a month. The judge gave me 7 months to get back on my feet, mental stability wise, before I had to show up. So then I had to go to prison from age 40 to 48. And I would have went from 38 and got out at 38 in 6 months. So depressed. My second week in prison, a man named Chuck Colson showed up. How many of you know Chuck Colson?
Oh, yeah.
Chuck Colson was the White House counsel under President Nixon. 20 years earlier, in the mid-70s, he showed up in my prison in 1998, almost 30 years ago, 27 years ago. And he showed up and he said, Mark, I'm reading about you in the Washington Post. These weren't online articles, and they're really new, they were real newspapers at that point, 98. And he said, I read about you in the Washington Post. I read where you took a 6-month plea agreement, threw it in the trash can, and now you got 8.5 years ahead of you. I read where you made $3 million a year for 8 years. Now you're $20 a month for 8 years. And said, I read where you went to Cornell. And he said he went to Brown, another Ivy League. He said, at Brown, Mark, they told me there was no God. And he told me how he became a Christian in prison during Watergate in 1976. And I said, yeah. I said, that's all I heard, that there is no God throughout all my university years. He said, Mark, do you think there's a PhD scientist that believes in God? And I said, no, there's not one in the world. He pulled out an article from Albert Einstein out of his jacket, my second week in prison. And Albert Einstein wrote the Big Bang Theory was impossible. Only God could create man and God could create the universe. Albert Einstein was not a Christian, but he was Orthodox Jew. He believed in God, but he saw Jesus as a man. Then he left me a book that same day, Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton memoir talks as much about Jesus as it did about science. And I read that book and I said, they never taught me any of that at Cornell University. That was never mentioned. And then he come back another month. He came a Saturday a month for almost 8 years, discipled me, was like a father to me and mentored me. And a couple weeks, 3 or 4 weeks later, he had another articles and books. Francis Collins, who discovered the human genome, is a Christian. Never talked about that at the university. And he left me book after book. And finally, my third month in prison, after a couple dozen different books and articles of Christians that believed in God, well-known Christians, reputable scientists that believed in God, he left me a book. He said, Mark, here's an atheist scientist in Minnesota, still alive today, and he's a professor, and he wanted to prove to the world that God did not exist, and he studied it for about 10 years. And he's a biologist. Mark, you're a biochemist. You're going to understand this language. And read this book, this atheist, and what he wrote. I read that book, and it was titled Surprised by Faith by Don Byerly, Bierle, famous scientist in Minnesota, still alive today. And this book, Surprised by Faith, this man, scientist, wanted to prove that God didn't exist, and it proved to him God exists and Jesus is the Son of God. I finished those 200 plus pages on June 4th, 1998 at 2 in the morning. And I went from a 13,000 square foot house with an 8-car garage to a 10 by 10 concrete floor, a locker, and a roommate, $20 a month. And I got down on my knees on June 4th, 98, 2 in the morning, and said, God, after reading this, how can you be a scientist and not believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that God exists? And I became a Christian 2 in the morning, June 4th, 1998. I'm third month in prison. I still have 8 years ahead of me. My wife came that following weekend with my kids. I'm usually blaming her that the reason I'm in this situation was because of her. And I said, Ginger, I've got no one to blame but myself. And I was in tears when I shared with her during that visit. And I said, Ginger, no one put a gun to my head and said, be involved with the largest price fixing case in U.S. history. I should have walked away from that company. And I said, Ginger, I now know God exists and Jesus is the Son of God. And our marriage started reconciling, and we're married 46 years now. 46 years we're married. And the divorce rate, if you go to prison, is 78% divorce rate if you go to prison. It's 99% divorce rate if you serve 5 years and longer. I had less than 1% chance, and I'm married for 46 years. I was on witness protection in a prison called Pensacola Navy base. I was on a Navy base, no fence or anything like that, on an honor system. If you leave, you get 5 extra years, and you go behind razor wire. And that chapel, that church of the Navy base became my family's church. My wife moved next to the prison and lived there. And she came every weekend, Friday night and Saturday and Sunday for 8 years with my kids to that prison. Our youngest was about 6 years old when I started wearing a wire. He's 40 now. So that's how long ago all this was. All my kids are older than I was when all this even happened. And I tell you, I started helping guys get their GEDs. I helped some of them get 2-year degrees through correspondence. And I would say that 8 years in prison became some of the most productive years of my life. And I was $20 a month. And I learned what a servant leader was because I'd never experienced it before. I was a selfish leader, and the CEO I worked for was a selfish leader. And I learned this: show me your mentor, I show your future, for a young person. And my mentor was a price fixer, and I was becoming him. And he was greed, and he was a selfish leader, and I was becoming just like our CEO and COO. And then Chuck Colson became my mentor, and it changed my life. And I tell young people all the time, show me your mentor, and I'll show your future. Because my life changed with the right mentor. So Chuck Colson, I got out about 20 years ago. He was still alive in 2005. He passed in 2012. So we had another 7 years, him still alive. We talked 2 or 3 times a week, and it changed everything. I wanted to, when I got out of prison, I wanted to continue the servant leadership, and I learned heating and air conditioning in prison. I thought, who's going to hire somebody after 8 years of prison? Even with a PhD, Ivy League University, I learned heating and air conditioning. I learned it well. companies started reading that I was in prison, and they started 4 biotech and pharmaceutical companies, 2 of them biotech, 2 of them pharmaceutical, started visiting me in prison to evaluate their patents. Said, Mark, we can't pay you, but we can offer you a job when you get out. I barely had time for prison. I was evaluating so many patents. And those 4 companies all offered me a job the day I got out. And I joined a company the very day I got out 20 years ago that was a Christian CEO because I didn't want to fall back in that trap of the greed addiction. So I joined with a Christian CEO, and he said, Mark, we got to start you like right out of college. I'm 48, 20 years ago. And he said, we got to start you all over like right out of college. I started from scratch, just like a PhD scientist right out of college. 4 promotions I had over 2 years. I was the COO and president within a couple of years. I was the number 2 executive for almost 10 years, and I'm still on the board of that company still today, 20 years later. And I was COO for 10 years. And we did it God's way, prayer groups, Bible studies, very similar like we're doing in Consolidated. I mean, basically, I've been involved in this faith at work movement for 20 years now. And now I get to do it at even a larger company with 17,000 employees, leading all these efforts at Coca-Cola Consolidated. So I'm 20 years in this faith at work movement. It's been the most exciting season of my life. I can't wait to get up and see what God has in store. The companies that ADM had to pay $3 billion back in class action suits for the theft, the price fixing. Coca-Cola alone, 400 million. The largest fine of all, class action suit was paid for corn syrup, corn sweetener price fixing to Coca-Cola. I am vice president and an officer of my biggest victim 35 years ago.
Wow.
I was stealing from them 35 years ago, and now I'm vice president working for the chairman's department, vice president and an officer of the company. Only God could do that. Only
Amen.
God could do that. The companies, when I went to prison, I spent $4 million on legal fees, had to sell they wouldn't exercise my stock options. The judge gave me 5 years off by paying the $9 million back. So I had about 60,000 for Ginger after I paid the $4 million on legals and paid the $9 million back. They weren't, like I said, the company wasn't going to exercise my stock option because I was their enemy. Those companies gave Ginger a whistleblower reward, including Coca-Cola, and financed her the 8 years I was in prison. Paid for her house, paid for her car, put her back in college to become a school teacher, paid for my kids' college during the time I was in prison. The companies I stole from took care of my family for 8 years because they said that case would have never happened without Ginger. And she stopped something that was going on for 12 years. Ginger looks back now and she said murder was on the table. Divorce wasn't an option, but murder was an option. She went on Katie Couric on CBS News. In 2009, they asked her, Ginger, how'd you do it? And she said, well, murder was an option, but divorce wasn't. And they said, when were you the most upset with your husband? She said, I was the most upset when my husband took a 6-month plea agreement and threw it in a trash can. And then Ginger said this. She said, I look back now. I thank my God that my husband didn't sign the 6-month sentence plea agreement because he would have came out the same greedy man he went in. He would have not listened to Chuck Colson with a 6-month sentence. But with 8.5 years, he was at the end of himself, and he became a Christian and changed his life. So she said, I thank God he didn't sign that 6-month plea agreement. So marriage survived, and the companies took care of my family, and a miracle of God. So I don't take it lightly. And I look back now, I thank God for brokenness, and God took my life from ashes to beauty, and I thank God for it. And now I get to do ministry every day, prayer groups, chaplaincy we have, Bible studies, and it's like a church plant and an organization. And I thank God for that brokenness, and I thank God the opportunity to be a witness for Jesus.
Mm.
Well, thank you guys for listening. All of you for listening. That gives you an overview of what happened during that time, and gives you a flavor of what happened. Thank you.
Wow, Mark, we just had a little technical breakdown right at the end there, but wow, what a huge and powerful story, man.
before he got.
Oh, that's a good question. Was Coca-Cola a Christian
Yeah.
company before you got there?
When did that start?
Oh yeah, they've been for 23 years. They've been a faith-based company for 23 years, and I've been here about eight years. So yes, they hired me just to help them
Who
even
brought it,
help
who
them
brought it to being a
get that even
Christian
further.
company? Who brought it to being a Christian company? Who was responsible at Coca-Cola to bring it to being a
Our
Christian company?
CEO and chairman, again, we're not Coca-Cola Company in Atlanta. We're Coca-Cola Consolidated.
Right.
Largest bottler. Frank Harrison is our chairman and CEO. And God gave him the vision 23 years ago to bring faith into this company. And that be the focus, to honor God in all we do by
Yeah.
serving others, pursuing excellence, and growing profitably. So this is our department, Culture and Care, is executing the vision that God gave our CEO and chairman, Frank Harrison.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You said so many things that are just, I mean, my mind is going crazy with just the number of incredible things you said there, Mark. So,
Did you guys, did
but
you hear John, were you guys cut off a little bit at the end?
Yeah.
yes.
I wanted to mention that the companies took care of my family financially. I don't know if you heard that part, including
That
Coca-Cola.
part we heard, and then it
The
cut off
whistleblower
after that,
reward, to the point where my wife says, thank God I didn't sign the 6-month plea agreement. Because she said I would have
Yeah.
turned out the same greedy man that I went in
Yeah.
if I only had 6 months.
All right.
What happened? What happened to all the
wow.
other executives
Well,
that
they were a lot
were
older. Keep in
involved in
mind, I
that?
was 32. Keep in mind, and our CEO was 75. He
Right.
died at 98 about 7 or 8 years ago. One of the guys, just a couple years older than me, went to prison, became a Christian,
Oh,
took
good.
my
That's what I
wife
was
and I
going to
out to
ask.
lunch about a decade ago, thanked me for wearing a wire against him and
Wow.
testifying against him. And he became a Christian. So some came out bitter. Most of them have passed away at this point. Some
Right.
came out bitter and came out better. But one difference was if they had God, they came out better.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Just
That's a
wanted to-
great question. Yeah, I want to give a chance to the guys to, if you can hang with us a little bit more, Mark, give
Yeah.
the chance for the guys just to respond. Normally we leave it out there for a little bit. What hit you, what challenged you, what hit you, what disrupted you. So hey, maybe just go as you feel led. Like, thanks, Brad, for that question. Any other questions from you guys? Like, I mean,
I do want to mention one of the ones that went to prison was Hoffman LaRoche. There were 11 products that were charged for price fixing. One of them was citric acid. It goes into beverage, just like a corn sweetener.
Mhm.
And that product was with Hoffman LaRoche price fixing. So those executives, 3 of them, 30 people went to prison, 4 from ADM, and then all the other companies. 3 executives from Hoffman LaRoche came. And then CBMC had an event in 2014 in Orlando, and they had me on stage with this guy who was the divisional president at Hoffman LaRoche, and he went to prison. And he talked about how he was talking to hitmen during my case before the trial started, a 7-week trial, and I was only witness, that he was talking to hitmen to have me killed. He became a Christian in prison. He hugged me on stage. He had his wife sitting with my wife. He thanked me for what happened, and he said he wanted to kill me 35 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
It's-
God
yeah.
did some miraculous things.
I just heard incredible stories, Marks. But first of all, for me, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, just by taking out the time of your busy schedule to speak to us, because we're going to use this on our launch for Michigan Christian Chamber of Commerce. It'll be something that we'll put up there. So this is what God can do in your life and
Wow.
can do in your life through business as well, right? So it's a great testimony. It's a great story. And I'll let these guys ask you a question, but I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share. It was great meeting you in Raleigh too
Summit
at that
Church.
event. Matter of fact, our
Summit
chairman
Church.
and CEO was speaking at that event.
JD, right? Oh no, that was Frank. But then
Yes.
JD was JD.
Yeah, JD
did some
Greer was there
speaking
too.
That, and Summit, he said that Summit's big claim is that they open more churches than any other church in the country, right?
I still wish we could speak to the lovely Ginger, because boy, oh boy, what were you married? You were married up, my friend, just like a couple of us here
It's a
in the
miracle.
circle.
It's a miracle.
She must be a wonderful woman. Guys, I want to give you guys a chance to kind of interact. I mean, I got lots of questions for Mark, but any thoughts that hit you, anything that disrupted you or motivated you, or What's been hitting you guys?
I can mention I've been a Christian almost 50 years. Mark, your testimony is one of the most amazing testimonies I have ever heard, honestly. Unbelievable.
Well, it's God's story. I was a train wreck. It was
Yeah.
God took it from ashes to beauty. My part of it was a train wreck.
Yeah. This total amazing
It-
story.
it-
That's gotta inspire a lot of people. It'll change a lot of lives. I'm telling
Only
you.
God.
Yeah, what you're doing is amazing.
Our history is his story, right? I love that. I love that line.
Mark, I can testify to what Bob just said, because Bob said, "Hey, listen, I got a killer schedule today. I might be able to squeeze on a couple of minutes online today." And he did not leave the screen for 1 second. So
No,
you
couldn't.
really
I got
did.
I got glued to it. It was like, I can't leave. This is unbelievable. So
So good, so good. Other thoughts? What are you guys thinking from around the country there? Eric, maybe Jay, what are you guys thinking?
Well, I got a quick question for you, Mark. You separate Coca-Cola Atlanta from Coca-Cola bottling. Is there a friction there at all? I mean, is Coca-Cola
there's really
Atlanta,
not a
are they a
friction.
Christian company?
There's not a friction. Coca-Cola Atlanta sold they had one bottling plant at the time, and it was in Chattanooga. And the inventor of Coca-Cola, it was glass bottles. It wasn't cans and plastic bottles at the time. We're 301 beverages now too. Dasani water, Fairlife milk, Smart Water. It's not just Coke and Diet Coke and Sprite. It's 301 beverages, Monster Energy, Body Armor. But he sold that bottling plant. He said that's a lot of work. He just wanted to sell concentrate to restaurants. He didn't want to sell glass bottles and he sold it for $1.
Wow.
122 years ago.
Wow.
So no friction at all. We're probably their largest customer. But we are a faith-based publicly traded company. They are not.
Amazing.
They have to be looking at our retention rates and our purpose-driven culture and our employee engagement. They say, what are they doing? They have to be seeing that.
Mhm.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You have more of a conversion rate than some churches do.
That's how we feel. We feel God is really blessing us.
Yeah.
317 recommits and salvations per month, to the point we try to hire 1,000 to 1,500 non-believers to replace retirees and introduce them to God.
It's incredible. And I mean, John began by saying that the prophecy was that revival is going to come within corporations, and that's literally what you're Jay, and what you just said there, and that all links up. It's exactly, you're going to where people are at. You're going to the woman at the well. You're going outside of the temple to.
Yeah, they don't go to church yet, so what a perfect. They got to go to work. What a
100%, 100%.
We call it BAM, business's mission.
Oh, yes, I love that. Bam, I like that. Well, we're getting close to time here. I'm sure things are rattling through you guys. Maybe let's get one more comment from somebody, then we need to wrap up in prayer to honor Mark's time here. Any other last minute
Let
comment?
me pray for all of you, if you don't mind, when we're done.
Would love you to do that, Mark. Love you too, man.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
Mark, are you still involved are you involved at all with any prison ministry?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, prison fellowship takes me I've been in several different prisons. I'd say probably maybe 10 to 15 a year. My wife, usually they bring her in too, but our marriage survived. They have my wife at a Q&A, a lot of events, the Q&A. Even the online, the T-Factor that John saw, we have an on-demand version. They have my wife as part of the Q&A on that on-demand digital format. Because most questions are usually for her.
Well, yeah, why you didn't hit this guy on the head a long time ago. So it's good. I love
She
that.
just kept praying for me. My mom just passed a year ago at age 91. She said she was more proud of her son going 8 years of prison than 8 years of an Ivy League university, because she said that took him away from God. In the brokenness of prison, he got to know God. And she would tell openly she was more proud of 8 years of prison.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I love it.
But let me pray for us.
Thank you, Mark.
Father, thank you for this wonderful opportunity just to share and be a witness for you and just all of us to encourage each other. And I just pray for each and every one on this call today, Father, and just pray that you protect them and shelter them. Give them tremendous wisdom and discernment, Father. I pray any wisdom and discernment you give them, they'll use it to glorify you, not just for themselves. Father, I pray that all of us, we honor you in all we do. I pray that you guide our steps. I pray that we're spirit led in all the decisions we make, Father. And I just pray we continue to become the men and women you designed us to be all about you and nothing about us, Father. And I pray all this in Jesus' strong name. Amen.
Amen.